injuries. And another thing, as you know, with these wearable platforms, and we can sort of bridge geographical divides, and so we can just reach out to more people. Okay, also possibly we're looking at individualized feedbacks. So as the title indicates, we are talking about these sort of standing meditations. And when Julian looked at this picture, he was basically telling me that this person is doing everything wrong. And I will let Julian speak to this more later on. So apparently, in Tai Chi practice, there is something called a standing meditation, and it comes with different names, such as Zhang. And Julian is basically going to tell you in the next few slides that why is it that the foot pressure measurement is an important thing in this sort of practice in terms of skill cultivation and so on. And our hypothesis is basically as you improve your skills, okay, you can actually achieve better health outcomes. And so what we're really hoping for is to build this into a device that is portable and more people, whether you're a practitioner or patient, can work with it, speed up the training process, and maybe when we do these measurements, we can actually get better health outcomes. As you know, there has been a lot of publications on these sort of topics, but you know the evidence, even though it's quite a bit, is not sufficient to break this threshold to have a popular adoption of these sort of practices. And the kind of wearable wearable devices we're talking about is a pressure mat that you would see in your local pharmacies for orthopedic measurements, so that you can come up with your own insets. And so what we're basically looking at here is a pressure mat like this. And then potentially, if we can get a sufficient information, then we could miniaturize it in these sort of things that I think Professor Zhang's group has also worked with extensively. So with this, I'm going to let Julian speak to why we like to take measurement of foot pressure during these sort of practices, and then afterwards I'm going to pick up again and talk about how we actually make those measurements.
All right. Okay. My name is Julian Chu. Thank you for inviting me to attend your seminar. And I really appreciate your research work in terms of the smart mobility for aging population, which is exactly for me. You know, I've been doing the Tai Chi practices for over 40 some years. I found out that Taijiquan is very, very helpful to me for so many years, particularly when I'm getting older. The Tai Chi is not just benefit in terms of the health and your well-being, and actually it's naturally a martial art. And if you do the Tai Chi correctly, and that would not just help you to do the defense work, but also help you to further improve the health. You know, I've been doing the Tai Chi in a way that helped me, you know, to walk and help me to run in a more relaxed and efficient way. I hope that that will, you know, get you some kind of interest into this area to help your study of smart mobility for aging population research. All right, and you know, I'm 80 years old this year. You know, I'm still taking challenges from young people. They play all different kind of martial arts. They all want to, you know, try to, you know, see how this kind of soft, slow type of exercise can be really working in self-defense. And what is the reason behind that? You know, why? You know, we do in relaxed mode, in the slow motion, and without using any brutal force that can be effective in self-defense. And there got to be some reason behind it. But fortunately, you know, there was many write-ups by the ancient masters. They put down on paper. We call it Tai Chi classics. And unfortunately, many people read it and semantically they know what they mean, but actually they don't completely understand it, and they cannot, get the martial benefit from doing the Tai Chi for, several years, for many years. I have seen so many people in that way. They've been coming to me after 50 years of practice, but I found out, they don't have this kind of so-called Tai Chi power. So why? So the whole thing of Tai Chi is, like I said in this slides, it's all in the routine. So the routine here is not just you try to use your mind to force yourself down to the ground, and then no, not yet, not still the previous slide. So how can you get the power up? We call internal power in Tai Chi. So all is in the root. So I'm going to get into you about this. How the ancient master was telling us about this, the basic principle of practicing Tai Chi, and then relate to the current, modern science, the ground reaction first, the torque leverage, and later I will get into the body internal movements about kinetic chain. I know some of you probably are very much knowledgeable about the kinesiology. You are expert about it, but we can discuss. So since we don't use a force, so you cannot measure the Tai Chi from whatever how much the force you can deliver from your hand. So you got to have some other way. That's what we're doing here. Try to use the measurable the pressure mat, okay, to help to see how we are doing in the Tai Chi progression. And then so we try to classify the different levels in this way. And I think Dr. Yam will give you more detail about the detailed studies. Now, next slide. So, next slide. So, the top line, is a summary of the Tai Chi classics wisdom. Okay, first of all, we do Tai Chi, we practice this, but how good are we? Are we really learning the Tai Chi? So we have to try ourselves in contact interface to each other. So we call the listening of Jing. The Jing is the force, the power. And then so this all is interoceptions, how much you can sense in people. And then once you're getting better, you get to the next degree. That means you can know yourself, you know your body, right? And that you can understand the internal power a little bit, we call proprioception. And really the higher level of Tai Chi practice in the internal feeling, internal power, we call interoception in the modern language here. So the power out of this coming from relaxation, coming from the routine, coming from the thinking. Okay, and how can we know that? How can we measure that? Okay, that is what we are trying to do here, and see how can we understand this Tai Chi internal internal wisdom. How can we actually find a way to measure in a very convenient way? Next slide. Okay, so let me get a little bit more about the plantar pressure matters in Taijiquan. Okay, and like some other martial arts, everything coming from the ground, but you can, like I said, you can try to get to the ground, but actually your body is stiff and you cannot really get the true power. And we tried that many times, and people try to sense it. And then how can you get this internal power here? So the ground reaction force is the basic, the key of this, but how can you get that? All right. And once you feel something, and then how would that translate? How would that work in your body? And how can you get not just the vertical, not just the linear power, and also how can you get the rotational, the torque. Okay, it's all in the whole body movements, and basically the secret here is on your ground, on your foot. Okay, so the plant pressure tell us, you got to relax, and you got to feel your body is sinking. Otherwise, you are not going to try to get the way that you needed to. And then I would give a little bit more back discussion later about the how that ground reaction force actually work. Okay, in this kind of a Tai Chi training. And then the Tai Chi class says you got to use your waist. The waist is commander. So what does that mean? And then our whole body actually is full of all the joints, and we try to use all the way that to deliver the things from the body out. But unfortunately, we use all different kind of a mechanism. Basically, we use inefficient, like that's I can categorize all into the classic 3, which is not efficient. So we need to change that into the class 2 level, and how to do so. And then you have, in our Tai Chi practice, we don't use force, but then where is the power from? So you got to use some kind of leverage. So how can you place your forearm in the whole thing? All right. So I will get a little bit more into that. And basically, this is coming from the publication I had 2 years ago in the Journal of Martial Art and Anthropology. Okay, let's go to the next slide. All right, so I think many of you know about this kinetic chain because you are the expert. You study the kinesiology better than what I can. But basically, we are trying to use this is that, how to find a way how to get the ground reaction transfer upward efficiently. Okay, so we identify those joints, and for example, your first and most important way relate to the ground reaction force is the ankle. And how can you mobilize the ankle? How can you relax the ankle? And then how can you got from the basic, the ground level up to your pelvis? Okay, so that will go from the ankle through the knee, but your knee is actually stationary. So it's a stable joint, and then you move your ankle, and that will transfer out through the knee and to the hip. And your hip joint, how can your hip joint transfer that to your thoracic spinal cord, bypass your lumbar section. Lumbar section actually will help you stable, and then go up onto the shoulder, and then you try to use the stable shoulder blade, and then try to mobilize your shoulder joints and get into the arm. So this is basically the way that we call the Tai Chi way of a kinetic chain movements, and how can we do so, and how can we apply with so-called cluster 2 levels, and I will discuss a little bit more later. Okay, go to the next slide, please. All right, this also from the paper I published. I just give an example. This is one of the postures. For example, you place your body weight, okay, right at we call the bobbling well point. That's right after the ball, but before the ankle. That's between the heel and the ball. So how can you drop your body weight, relax in the relaxed mode, sinking down? Use the gravity to the point right behind the ball, and then you have to relax. And how can you get the power up from ground reaction force to your lower leg, through the say a calf muscle for this way. And you can see we can vertical torque, we can have a horizontal torque, and then you use the leverage, the class to take the ball as your forearm, and just like you push it a wheelbarrow, and then let the body weight coming down to help you to lift up your ground reaction force through the Achilles tendon and the other muscle, calf muscle, for this way. And then we do a different way that you also utilize the shin muscle. This is just very basically the diagrammatic explanation about how Tai Chi in the relaxing mode, but not use too much effort, but you can efficiently drive the ground reaction force upward. Next slide, please. All right, and then this is also one of the diagram in my published paper here. So this with Tai Chi, we do the way we shift the weight, okay, from one position to another. So we try to position ourselves, okay, either when we do the front defense, or the front movements, we place the body weight to the ball. And then when we retreat back, we place our body weight to the heel. So we change our center of gravity in this way. And then so we still using the class 2 level. Okay, so one in diagram A, like I explained in the previous diagram, and we try to get the ground reaction upward through the calf muscle upward, and go to the next body segments, that is to your pelvis and to your lumbar section. And for the diagram B here, when we do the rollback, for example, we pull somebody into it, and then we try to sink it down, and we still use the class 2 level, and we use our shin muscle, okay, to also try to drive the ground reaction force upwards more efficiently in this way. The next slide, please. Okay, so with those kind of basic understanding, all right, and then people might not believe us. Okay, you have to show me. Okay, now we do the actual the 2-person push hands, but okay, you can throw me out that, but how you are doing this? So we try to use the way like I described in this diagram here. Okay, so we try to have people. We do the three different kind of modes. First one, we let the people just stand there, okay, doing nothing, just try to meditate to the best extent they can, right? And then just like any normal situation you do in the daily life. And then the second mode is we ask our students or people who to come into the test, to ask them to do relaxation in this 站桩 standing meditation, and try to sink to the best extent they can. They do their best from their many years of practices, and how can they best feel themselves in body sinking, in body relaxation in a Tai Chi way. Okay, and then the third move is, all right, so now you feel yourself is doing your best in the meditation, in the Tai Chi practices. You relax, you think, and then you do all the way you can. You can turn, you can rotate, and you can pretend yourself in a martial art practice in a combat mode. And how would that? Okay, so to give yourself the best capability, and then we will measure you from the bottom of your feet and say how that will look like scientifically. Okay, next slide. All right, this is how we come up with. I think Dr. Yan will give you much detail about all the analytical diagram and then the figures to show you. So we found out that even that, for the beginners, some of them do many of Tai Chi, but the body is still tense, and so their thinking is not that great, but they didn't know about. Okay, we found out from the testing, so they still use the localized force. So that we measure them. You can their ground reaction force utilization is inconsistent. And then for some middle levels, we found out, from our tests. And some of them, we asked them to use the diaphragmatic breathing. They've been doing that, some of them, for many years. And I don't have time to describe the benefit and the mechanism of diaphragmatic breathing, which is very important in our Tai Chi practices. And we say they have some kind of improvement, some kind of partial kinetic chain usages. And then they have a better, the center of pressure modulation, but their ground reaction force utilization is better, but it's not so good as we expected. We can show you the result later. And for the advanced students here, you can see here, that's wholly different. And the whole body integrated, and then they have a better torque control. They know how to utilize the leverage more efficiently in the relaxed in a very efficient way. We show also the moving diagrams for you. Next slide, please. All right, and then just that is we think we have to do a little bit more to prove that for the advanced levels, and we have those kind of 9 different way of measurements. First of all is you just try to stand there, you just do the normal way you're standing, okay, your daily life. Then you begin to utilize ground reaction force to the extent you can. And then you gradually incorporate into your diaphragmatic breathing and try to relax a little bit more. And then you go down a little bit more in the sinking feeling. And then you try to now manipulate, okay, your ground reaction force, your level 2 class levels, and you try to use your dorsiflexion, and you try to use plantar flexions, and you can use your shin muscle, you use your curve muscle, and then use your random way, okay, and do whatever you can with those 9 different ways. We test how will that show up in our pressure mat measurements. Next slide. All right, so we found out that in our machine learning practice here and test here, we found out that actually scientifically we can capture the ground reaction force modulation by different level of practices, and how the torque directions they can manipulate, and how good in your relaxation mode, and how they are sinking down, and how they're utilizing your kinetic chain, and how efficient is that utilization in terms of kinetic chain timing. And so we can classify by the scientific way statistically, and provide it into the different kind of skill level. And roughly we put down into the 3 levels, and some of them we can, if we have a more additional testing, we might be able to get down to even 5 classification. And I think Dr. Yan going to explain later. Next slide, please. All right, this is our conclusion. And so for a relaxed and slow and meditative type of Tai Chi practices, how can we actually try to find out and whether it's really ground reaction force efforts, and how is that utilized, and how can the energy transfer, the power transfer, from those kind of Tai Chi practice, and not using any other brutal force, and how the diaphragmatic breathing and also other type of leverage practices from the Tai Chi daily practice, and how would that be able to measure using our pressure mat. And amazing that we have some very interesting results. I think Dr. Yan will be able to show that to you. So basically, I will just give you a little bit about the biomechanics, in very short term, and then later on, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Julian. So I would proceed with the technical part of this study. And here's its outline. As you can see, right, we're using a pressure mat to measure the ground reaction force for a upright stance. which is what people usually do when they engage in this sort of standing meditation. We're looking at those pressure signature over different regions of the foot over the time and frequency domain. And we asked the participants to perform in 3 different modes, as mentioned by Julian. So we get this signature, we analyze it, and we were basically able to do some sort of classification using unsupervised learning algorithms. And we also perform hypothesis testing on a binary classification. And later on, if time permits, I will also show you what the signature actually looks like. So here's our study. So as we said, we are asking participants to stand on top of a pressure mat, okay? And we have a picture on the left-hand side. So the study protocol stipulates that the student remains a straight torso and also a straight leg. So the knee should not be bent. And then they take off their socks, they get them weighted, and then you could just step onto the pressure mat. So once the study begins, the foot is not allowed to leave the mat. Okay. The data is collected real time, and then over here, basically, we have a classification of the skill levels of the different participants, with higher being the advanced and 5 being the beginners. And then this is basically the tally of the people who participated in the study. As mentioned, we asked them to perform the 3 modes, okay, for comparison purposes. The first one is when you do nothing and you just stand there, okay. The second one is you start engaging in some sort of relaxation and maybe diaphragmatic breathing in order to induce the sinking. And in this case, you do not turn your waist, okay. And in the third study case, we asked them basically to also maximize the ground reaction force, which is similar to what people would do in this sort of sparring push-hand situation, with the ground reaction force as well as torque modulation. Okay. Once again, we said that all participants have to maintain an upright posture, straight, okay, knees, okay, and then both feet have to be on the mat the whole time. So the study was approved by went through the ethics approvals. And then in this first batch of study, which was taken back in 2024, we had 19 male, 4 female, and these are some of the breakdown of the demographics. Okay. So as you would imagine, for the first neutral mode, okay, this is what you likely see, right? So what we're plotting here is basically the pressure versus time. Okay, so the horizontal axis is the time. Well, we basically take about 500 frames. Each frame is about 50 milliseconds, and then basically we can visualize the heat map of the foot pressure distribution. The foot pressure is identified by different regions of the foot: toe 1, toe 2 to 5, metatarsal 1. So metatarsal is basically around the ball of your foot. Okay, there is the midfoot, and then there is also the heel region, and the heel region is separated into 2. Okay, so typically, what happens is that initially, when the subject steps onto the mat, you see a typical spike, okay? And that's something that you would imagine as you're going through transition. We basically ask them to just keep steady for a little while, okay? And then we'll start taking measurements. And where we actually do the study for the data is on the data to the right of this white line, when the participant has come to some steady state and we allowed them to settle. And so we can see the foot pressure measurement for the left foot on the upper side and for the right foot on the bottom. And we can see that they are relatively stationary, right? So there's a little fluctuations here and there. So what this really indicates is that the participant in this study, they are free of injury, because in some cases when people are injured, when they are in an upright stand, these curves can actually fluctuate back and forth simply because of some internal imbalances that the body's injury has sustained. So across all the 23 subjects, all of them basically have some similar behaviors as they are engaged in mode number 1, which is our rest stance. And here's what the surprising thing. When I first saw this, I couldn't believe myself either. Okay. and we asked participant to perform the mode number 3, which is when we asked them to engage in to maximize the ground reaction force. This is what we see in the time domain measurements. Okay, so even after steady state, okay, as the participant is engaged trying to maximize the ground reaction force, the foot pressure across all different regions of the foot, okay, basically is demonstrating some synchronized and controlled fashion of oscillation, okay, for all parts of the foot, okay. And now, not everybody can actually do this. This is only a signature that we observed for advanced practitioners. The whole time, the torso is straight, and the leg is straight, and there's no bending up and down of the knees. As you can imagine, that will change the center of gravity, and that will basically introduce all these fluctuation. But this is not due to that fluctuation. Okay, so obviously, the advanced practitioner is able to coordinate some of the muscle movement, some of the relaxation, in order for the synchronization to maximize the ground reaction force measurements, as we can see here. And down here, as a comparison, we're looking at a subject who is also encouraged to do this same thing, but as you can see, right, the fluctuation is relatively minor. Okay, so based on as Professor Zhang's experience is in signal processing and sensors, these two signals in the time domain are obviously significantly different, will have significantly different frequency content. Okay, and by the way, these two subjects basically have about the same body weight, so we don't think that there is a biases in that regard. So after looking at the signal in the time domain for both the beginner and the advanced practitioners, we looked at the frequency representation of these signatures. As we said, we cut off the first transitional frames. We only took about the 380 frames for the steady state. Okay, once the both feet has settled on the mat, and you can see, right, for the heel letter region, which is the bottom, the foot here, okay, for a particular foot, and I believe this might have been the right foot. If we look at the frequency response, it's really just a simple rectangular window with no zero padding, no overlap. You look at the frequency, you perform the Fourier transform and look at the frequency content. There is a substantial signature difference between what you have for the advanced practitioner versus somebody who's just starting to practice. Okay, and we also have the same observation when we decide to look at the frequency content, okay, of the foot at the metatarsal foreregion, okay, and which is where we're circulating here, and again we see the same sort of signature. So what we decided to do is, for the rest is become relatively simple, right? As you can see, right, like the frequency content of the signal is not very high, where at the beginner case, for the advanced practitioner case is much higher. So is there anything that we can do to simply extract these sort of data and so do some very simple classifications? Okay, so this is what we decide to do next. So what we've done is basically we plotted, okay, for the left foot and the right foot, okay, the frequency content of those signature. And the frequency content is basically just the area that are covered by those curves. Okay, for every participant, okay, we did it for each foot, and for each foot we did it for the metaphor region, which we said is the ball of the foot, and then the heel lateral region, as we said. And we have these sort of two-dimensional plots. So this is basically without any sort of classification here, where we're not even applying any sort of clustering algorithm. We just simply plot these sort of signatures, okay, and then we can see then basically it falls into 3 groups without any sort of training. Okay, so you have one over here that is way out of the ballpark. And then you have some people here in the sort of the middle region. And then by and large, most of these people who are not able to leverage their body to generate enough ground reaction force, they all tend to be around the origin, as you would expect. Right? So each point here corresponds to one participant, okay? So here for the left foot and similarly for the right foot, each point corresponds to one participant. In total, we have plotted 22 participants on these plots, okay, on this initial observation, and 2 have been rejected because they decided that our study protocol wasn't valid and they decided not to comply, okay? So obviously, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to see whether we can check some of these clustering, okay, and see that whether some of these things make sense or not. So we sort of perform some of these different clustering. We have the k-means, we have the hierarchical, we have the dB scan. We try different sort of metrics to compare our clustering, and so on and so forth. And because of time, I'm not going to go too much into this, but I'm going to show you the final results. Okay. So what we're showing you here is that basically our practitioners, the metrics with respect to the frequency content of the signal for the left foot in the metatarsal 4 and the heel lateral region, as well as for the metatarsal 4 and the heel lateral region for the right foot. Okay. And over here, we're plotting in these columns the machine classification. We compare them with the self-classification as well as the expert classification, as we have denoted a little bit earlier. Okay. We also have the different age, different weights, and the consequent the BMI, the body mass index, and the number of years that they have spent in terms of the practices. Okay. So what we can tell is that we can compare is that when the machine classification for the self classification, the agreement is actually very favorable. Okay. Whereas if you compare with the machine classification versus the expert classification is actually much, much closer. So what we want to do next is basically if there's any sort of a hypothesis testing we can do in terms of the binary classification. And as you're all familiar, in order to do that, we need to come up with some sort of metric. And in this case, the metric is reasonably straightforward, why we motivate it. So we basically take these sort of signatures from the heel region and from the ball region. Okay, we basically use a Euclidean metric. Okay, and then we want to see whether we can set some threshold and perform some binary classification between beginners, okay, and a non-binary and non-beginners. And the way that we decide to pick these sort of a threshold is we pick it in such a way that the conservative the machine classification will always give a smaller number of subjects in the non-beginner region. So it will make a more conservative estimate. Okay. So what we have done here is the results for the initial points. So we have a calibration curve on the right, and then we have ROC, area under curve test. Okay. And then what we're basically looking at is the metric, okay, okay, versus the experience level. So the experience level, as we mentioned, was from the very beginning of the study, and we have our advanced practitioner as being 1 and the beginner being 5. Okay, and then we can say for our metrics, obviously the metric is much higher. Okay, for the group of 21 for beginner versus non-beginners. And you can see the area under curve is 1, and then you have p-value of less than 0.05, which basically means that you can maybe make some hypothesis over here, do some hypothesis testing. Now, we don't actually have that many people in this group that we can classify as the advanced practitioners. So as a result, what we've done is that we're also interested in what we take out the sole advanced practitioner in this data. Okay, so we've done this as well. Okay, so we look at the group of 20, which we removed the most advanced practitioners, and then we compare the metric that we're interested in. Then we still sort of see these trends. Okay, and similarly, the p-value has actually further reduced. Okay, and then we also get a AUC value of 1. Now, typically, when you get an AUC value of 1, okay, for matching statistics for doing hypothesis testing, it could well mean that you are doing overfitting. Okay, meaning you're doing some sort of circular fitting, and so there is, for your result, these results are extreme, awfully optimistic. So what we have done in a year later is that we also we took numbers for the similar study protocol for a group of 9. And in this study that was taken a year later in Toronto, with the same sort of number, same sort of metric, okay, we also measure the area under curve, okay, and the p-values, okay, which basically validates our hypothesis testing, okay. And in this case, the machine learning versus expert rating, as well as the machine learning versus the self, again, this shows the similar performances, whereas the machine learning and the expert learning are much closer to each other versus the machine learning versus self-reporting. As you can see from these sort of graph, right, like people who might have practiced a long time, let's say in this case of 36 years, thinking that he or she is actually a non-beginner is really a beginner from the expert's point of view, as well as from the machine point of view. Okay. So over here, okay, we're going to show you some of the data. So as you see, right, AUC of 1, sometimes we can think of it as overfitting. But in this case, we have enough evidence to think that this is a simply separable problem. Okay. So what we're plotting here is basically the balance. And the balance as defined by the pressure met is basically the pressure for the different foot region for one region versus another region. So, and I think they define it as balance, and I'm not an expert in biomechanics, is because basically the net, if that is somewhat equal to 0, if you take the difference between these two, okay, then your foot is basically not fluctuating, basically not trembling. Okay, so this is the balance analysis for one advanced practitioner. Okay, and in this case, in mode number 1. Okay, so because of time, what I want to show you is I'm going to skip through a few of these slides. Okay, and I'm going to jump through to what happens as the advanced practitioners decide to activate some of these muscles that I talked about earlier. So for example, there is the calf, okay? And with the calf, you can see in the time domain, you see these very distinct periodic behaviors, okay? As you can see, right, this is the center of pressure memory diagram. And you can see if you compare this, okay, with the previous mode, okay, the previous mode tend to be one stationary point, okay, whereas you can see there is a spread over here. And then the balance curve also shifts. This is for the calf engagement, okay. This is for the shin engagement. You see similar qualitative behavior, okay, fluctuation in the balance plot, the spread of the center of pressure measurements, okay. And then if you decide to have both synchronized calf and shin muscle engagement, you can see like substantial fluctuation, although very well controlled and coordinated. They are periodic in nature in time, okay, for the balance as well for the net pressure. And then the center of pressure basically spread, okay, in terms of area coverage. So basically the center of gravity or center of pressure is basically shifting between the ball and the heel of the foot more substantially, okay. And then let's say if we decide to do synchronized calf and shin muscle engagement along with base rotation counterclockwise, you can see, right? Significant, and then again, this spread over here, okay, has increased, not just in line, but also laterally in terms of area. And then we have another case where you have waist rotation in the clockwise direction. You see similar sort of behavior. And finally, this is the scenario when we simulating a sparring situation of the random push hands, where you have random synchronized calf and shin engagement with randomized waist rotation. So you can see, right, you can all these wild fluctuations, and you can see that the center pressure distribution over time basically goes all over the place, right? As opposed to a stationary point. So finally, what we show you is an animation of these plots, okay? And see if I can do it here. Okay, so I can do it here. Maybe it's the next slide. So as you can see in this animation, right? So on the left-hand side is in mode number 3, okay, whereas the practitioner is engaging in some sort of a simulated sparring situation. And then the same practitioner in the restful stance is compared on the right-hand side. In the restful stance, when you're not doing anything, you can see that despite the frame moving, right, the center of pressure is actually not moving very much at all. Whereas in the left-hand side, when the person is engaging in the sparring situation, is moving all over the place. And since this is memory in the distribution of the center of pressure, then basically this becomes elliptical, whereas this basically remains like a straight line. Okay. So at this point, I like to summarize. Okay, so in terms of the technical measurement, we have represented the ground reaction force signatures in both the time and frequency domain. Okay, for practitioners at different levels. Okay, and then we were able to meaningfully using unsupervised classification clustering algorithm to classify some of these sort of skill levels, and then we perform hypothesis testing to validate the different practitioners in the practices. Okay, and again, we are there is at this point we are really just scratching the surface. There's a whole lot of things that we can implement and make these things even better, and we'd like to move this forward with your help. So the results of this has been published, has been under review in different publications. So as you know, these are reasonably respectable publications, and we are very hopeful of our results. Okay. And finally, I'd like to thank the university for being very supportive of my adventure here. And also, I'd like to thank the funding agency for supporting this research. I think we could potentially make a big difference here. And also, last but not least, I'd like to thank Professor Zhang for inviting us to having us have this talk here. And really what we're looking for this sort of a opportunity is to build a network of practitioners at different skill levels, okay, so that we can collect more data to make this even more convincing than what it currently is. We're looking for not just practitioners, but also patients who might be looking for some solution for their chronic health problem, who think that maybe this sort of exercise is one way to go about this. And as both Julian, myself, and Professor Zhang, we are really just engineers. We are absolutely interested in working together with clinicians and other healthcare professionals who are willing to take a chance on us. This is, as Julian was telling you, when I first saw this data, I couldn't believe it myself, and I was pleasantly surprised. And I think there are other people in the broader community in North America, Europe, as well as Asia, who have these sort of skills and who was generous enough to share this with us. So finally, again, I'd like to thank Julian for sharing his knowledge with us. And then I'd like to thank Professor Zhang for this opportunity to speak with you guys today. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'd love to entertain any questions.
Okay, thank you, Scott, and thank you, Julian, for the excellent presentation. I believe in the audience, we have not only researchers and SMAP trainees, we have also Taiji master, Bruce, and also long-term practitioners, Michael Wilson. So, feel free, the floor is open for any questions. The first question is always the hardest. Bruce, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm just wondering, what is the definition of the standing meditation?
So Julian, I'm going to
is there a
let you answer
definition
that.
of standing meditation that's being used?
Bullet, which makes class 0.
Okay.
Example,
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sure.
Yeah. Standing meditation is a very fundamental practice for Taijiquan. For many people that they begin to learn Tai Chi and they use different form to practice, but they may not be able to sense their own body in terms of the way the effect of relaxation, the thinking, and so forth. So the standing meditation is a very fundamental way that we in our lineage been told to do so, particularly during the first few years and then continuously throughout. For myself, I put a lot of time when I first learned this Tai Chi because my postures might not be performed correctly. And my joint may still be stiff, but I didn't know about. So the standing meditation was very, very helpful for me to gradually to understand the external perception, progressively into proprioception, and finally, if I could, get into the interoception. So that made me think I'm really, thinking. And so, in many other martial arts, for example, in Xingyi, they also talk about, meditation. So they take out the xing out, the form out. They just use the yi, just the mental session. They do this just standing meditation by itself. So you can see in this picture here, this guy tried to do the standing meditation without moving the body, and then internally, gradually, your mind, your nerve system, your skeleton system, your bone, and then your muscle all being coordinated up and down together. And this guy, I say he's trying to do the standing meditation, for example, to show it to you, but I don't think he's doing right. So first of all, I say himself in these pictures, he's not relaxing. You can see here, his arm raised too high.
Yes,
so
his shoulder muscle is contracted.
This way, his shoulders are tight.
Yes.
All right. I will not do this way. I will lower my elbow. I will drop my shoulder sinking down.
All right.
And also his foot is a 1.5 shoulder weight. That's a 2 wide. So his leg muscle to me is tight. So he needs to narrow down to about one shoulder width.
All right.
Okay, to maximize the sinking feeling. Okay, so this show you how important the standing meditation is all about. It's a very fundamental way for Tai Chi practices.
So I was just wondering, is there a standard protocol that you can coach people who are not familiar with what standing meditation is all about? Because I personally think that the mental visualization is a critical component that's seldom being emphasized or even elaborated by many Tai Chi instructors and coaches.
Right.
Because
Right. Yeah. For example, when you do the standing meditation, first of all, are you calming down? Are you calm down or not? So you have to try to change your body, your body not to be tense, and then triggered by actually your brain function. So your brain wave got to be changed from the beta wave to alpha wave. That's very critical to help you to relax.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then, for example, this guy, he's standing like this. If I push him from the back, if he's thinking, his brain wave is slowed down. If he's really meditated, and he will not be able to push out by me. Okay, for example. All right. So this standing meditation is very importantly both from your nerve and also your body, skeleton plus muscle together.
Have you ever developed a standard protocol that you could coach your students like how to visualize, because to me, standing meditation is quite a loose definition by different people. And to visualize is not an easy task. In my case, when I teach diaphragmatic breathing, I actually try to help people carry a mental visualization. For example, visualizing, for example, ocean waves that is in sync when you're breathing. Because in that way, in your brain, you're visualizing, looking at ocean waves coming at you standing on the ocean beach. Then you fill your mind with that picture rather than having people individually do their own, what I call non-standard protocol visualization, because meditation is very difficult. It's not an easy task. In fact, it's more difficult than the physical aspects of learning Tai Chi or any other of the martial arts, I find.
Exactly.
And there seems to be a disconnect between among a lot of Tai Chi instructors not being able to verbalize and actually suggest something that's really useful on a practical basis for people to attain the relaxation that you are saying.
Right, Bruce, I think you're right. Again, you and I understand that standing meditation is very basic for all internal martial art, not just Tai Chi, also for example, Xing and Bagua together.
Yes.
All right. I just want to comment on what you said about visionary. Okay,
Yes.
You say you want people thinking about the ocean, thinking about the beautiful sky or so ever. Okay.
Yes.
My suggestion is quite different. Okay. I will ask my students, because of my own experience, not to even try to think. We need to empty our mind, not to think about anything. Okay, so what can we do so then? So we need to place our mind to your stomach, to your dantian there. Okay, to try to sense your diaphragmatic breathing, and then your brain functionally only two modes. One I call the default mode network, the other called text positive network. What you try to do here is you try to get people try to think a different way. I don't know whether that will help them to get either to default mode network or to the text positive network. Okay, yes. You try. That's, to me, you try to people think about some other way there. Maybe that will help a little bit in terms of the text positive network, but you think about something else like sky, beautiful ocean, or so forth, that will not help them to sink down. Yeah. Okay. You need to put your mind downward. Yes. Okay, and do nothing. So the brain functions between switching between text mode network and the default mode network, alternatively, almost 50%. Okay, but you have to think about the text mode most if you can, and then your mind will go randomly daydreaming out, and then sometimes but you don't have to stop it. But then later you need to bring them back to your stomach and have the text positive mode. That is the way that your mental function in your stand meditation.
Yeah, what I'm saying is not random visualization. I'm using the visualization of ocean waves rising as you breathe in, to match what you're doing with something that it's more concrete in your mind. So it's not random looking at skies and everything else, but to really capture the cyclic motion of the ocean waves rising as you breathe in, the ocean waves coming down, rolling towards you. You're standing on the beach as you breathe out, and by the time you finish breathing out, you visualize the wave has washed up your toes. And then as you begin the next cycle of breathing in, you visualize another wave is born and cresting. See, right. So yeah. I'm not asking people to visualize the panoramic view, but the panoramic view sets the ambience in which you are standing. So, almost like photo memorizing and matching cyclic ocean waves with your breathing. Because if you say empty mind, it's impossible, because the human brain is a busy organ. Within 5 seconds, all kinds of thoughts will come flooding in your mind. unless you are trained in a monastery or somewhere else, for the average person, it's always very difficult to say empty mind. No, it's very, very difficult. So what I'm trying to get at is to fill your mind with something that matches what you are doing, and not just visualizing a beautiful beach. No, the beautiful beach is the ambience. The visualization is actually the cyclic waves that you're trying to match with your breathing. And I have feedback from students. They have some phobia with waves and water. Then I suggest you can visualize the playground swing, where you're swinging upward and forward, reaching the apex as you breathe in. And then as you breathe out, you visualize the playground swing you're sitting on is coming back down to the back, and then finally arriving right at the starting point when you finish breathing out. And then as you breathe in, you go through the next cycle of matching your inhalation with the playground swings moving forward and upward. So we have this cyclic nature, and there are very few, I find that there are very few daily life activities that you can connect, that people can easily visualize. It's not easy. Those are the only two that I've found so far. And I'm always asking for people to give me suggestions, what other things. And then there were other people say, oh, roller coaster, that's terrible. Because the roller coaster is too...
Bruce, if I may interrupt, we do have some time constraints.
Yes, sure. Sorry.
But this is a very interesting discussion. It sounds like there are different instructional approaches. I would suggest to put this offline. I have on my list.
May I have a very brief explanation?
Please.
Sure, please.
Yeah, sure. Bruce, I agree with what you just said, but that again, that's for beginners.
Yes.
Okay. But once you get into meditation for quite some time, then you gradually learn to reject all the other thoughts yourself. You don't have to go think about the ocean or a beautiful sky.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for your opinion. Thank you.
Thanks. And I think the next one is Mason.
Hi, very interesting talk. Something that stuck out to me was the proprioception link. This is something very important in physiotherapy. It helps with rehabilitation for ankle sprains. Now, two questions. One is, have there been studies that compare Tai Chi methods against more traditional approaches for rehabilitation of ankle sprains? And two, also wondering about your modeling approach. Did you try a more simpler, non-machine learning based logistic regression for the modeling? Perhaps I can maybe better explain what features differentiate your groups.
I think there are some studies about comparing the Tai Chi practice effects by other means. I think the proprioception, which is very, very, very important. You have to practice. You have to like the discussion I just had with Bruce. Okay, your mind must be settling down, calm down, and then you begin to feel your own body. Okay, and then you have to persistently practice this every day in order to get from exteroception into the proprioception. So you begin to feel your skin, you begin to feel your fingertips, for example, the tingling, for example, and then you have a little bit more better thinking feeling. All right, and again, the proprioception is just intermediate level. Okay, gradually you will feel something more internally. Okay, that's what I call interoception, and then we can discuss later. About the measurements, okay, the Tai Chi, like I said, you don't use the force, and you cannot measure by your exalting force, and that would be a brutal force. That would not be helpful, and we can deal with that all the time if you use your brutal force, which would not be useful, in our, for example, Tai Chi type of self-defense purpose. And then, would that be a way to measure your body movements in terms of the synchronization of your body, coordination? And that would be difficult. I think the simplest way of what we come out is, like Dr. Yan just showed you. Once you relax, you're sinking down, you learn how how to manipulate your nerve skeleton and the muscular system here and coming down to the feet. And you can see all the beautiful diagrams we show. But if you just use your own yourself, use a force, you try to sink it down, you try to move your foot, move ankle, you will not show that kind of a diagram. That's our internal, very minute, very sensitive changes of your internal body from the Tai Chi advanced level. Dr. Yan, you want to comment on some other type of measurement devices?
Yeah, so with regard to the regression measurement, to be honest, we started on this venture having borrowed a pressure plate from a colleague who wasn't using it. So a lot of these classification and regression is really conducted because we weren't sure what to look for. Okay, and now that we actually have a better sense of what to look for, you could basically integrate other kind of sensors, and that will basically give you different signatures, and we can say that these problems are actually quite separable to the extent that you don't even need to use regression at all. So I don't know if this answers your question, but this is where we're coming from.
Yes, thank you.
Dylan, you had your hand up for a long time. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Rong, and thanks for the great talk. I love the integration of the biomechanics into this because it's something that I'm not, overly well versed in, but I think it's a great application of it, right? Of trying to understand the body and the biomechanics of it. I'm interested in some of the frequency content stuff, but I think with respect to time, I'll kind of skip past that. I'm curious on like we talked to, or you've talked a lot about the sinking in side of things, again, which is a really cool piece. The challenge, I think, is, if we're looking at ground reaction force, it's a tough one, right? Because I'm curious what sinking in generally means. What I'm thinking of is, when people have injuries or they're guarding or things like that, we see co-contraction. And what I'm guessing the sinking in is people start to relax and limit that co-contraction. But how do you actually conceptualize or quantify that sinking in? And is the ground reaction force the best way to do that?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Dr. Yam, you want to answer that? About
Yeah, so I guess the question is whether
the frequency, yeah,
the
more so getting into the general idea of like sinking in, because again, to me, without a lot of knowledge in this space, to me the sinking in is kind of the relaxing, and potentially like limiting co-contraction, right? The muscles are relaxing when you're tense. That to me is not sinking in. But how does that physiologically transfer to the ground reaction force, which is just your vector, your vertical vector, right?
So I cannot really speak to the sinking, as I'm also sort of on an exploratory journey myself. But what I can tell you is that the co-contraction that you are mentioning actually is not appearing when the participant like engaged in the neutral stance, meaning that you're just standing there relaxed. So you actually don't see any sort of contraction as we can see over here, right? Now, so if I were to guess, and I think Julian and Bruce could correct me, is that the sinking, which whereas in the engagement of the ground reaction force, might have something to do with the breathing as well. But again, this is the difference in signature between these two. So all the 21 participants in this study were basically able to do this, right? But not many people were able to do what we see over here. So I guess again, I probably won't be a very good person to answer the question what exactly sinking is.
Yeah. So and just sort of clarity,
Okay.
is that the standing like static one? Because I do think again when you have that oscillating focus on center of pressure, that makes sense. But that's that's a crazy noisy signal, right? Is that just standing specifically?
Yeah, let me explain something here. From my own progressive practices, in the early years, I try to relax, and then I try to think. All right. Actually, I gain some kind of feeling, but my body pressuring down to the ground was not that heavy. All right. And then so a lot of people may think that, oh, well, I just let myself down, maybe even you sit on the sofa, you're sitting there, that's more relaxing, which is not, which is collapsing. Okay. So my own experience when I was standing on the pressure mat, okay, for the 9 steps Dr. Yan was showing you about, for the first couples, I was just relaxing and try to think. All right. In that way, I gradually feel my feet touching the floor mat become more and more downward. Okay. I just sense that because from the relaxation degrees and then from the thinking. And with that, when I get more, I slow down my brain wave more, I calming down more, I feel my body heavy, even heavier more. So then I will have a way to get to the reaction from the ground, so-called ground reaction force upward. So that's all the facts imaginary, unbelievable. Okay, from not using force, from effortless, but just relaxing and thinking. That take a long time to really get to it. So that's the reason you say the different classification. The beginner, they try to do so, but the measurement, which is completely different. And when the advance and you get into you are able to manipulate very, very sensitively about the ground reaction force. Okay. And then you just change a little bit your losing ankle, and you try to you a better way to leverage the ground reaction force upward. So you can see all the different frequency showing up. If I don't mentally thinking down, if I don't use my internal nerve to help me to get my joints move in the way that I don't by my body from externally, it's not moving at all. People can see it, but internally it's very dynamic. Okay, that's why we need to have this kind of pressure map to be able to measure that kind of progress.
Yeah, thanks. It's again really really cool stuff. I think it'd be real interesting to see some more data up the chain, like you said, brainwaves all the way to EMG and things like that. But thanks for the answer and the great presentation.
Yeah, well, and also if we have a chance to see each other, okay, I can have for example, we have both our hands in touch, or you touch my body, I touch your body, okay? And then you try to sink it down, and I try to sink it down. And you can then try to get your ground reaction force feeling up to push me. And I can do the same to push you. I bet I can tell you, you push to me will not be any effects. I can neutralize you because you are using force. You are not using the ground reaction force. You are using your piecemeal arm force, maybe your body force. But if I do it to you, I very likely I just use one finger touch you, and I don't think you can stand. That's because of sensation, thinking, and that ground reaction force. That's a degree of differences. Okay, if you don't believe me, we can find a time to show. That's why, once in touch, you probably can also appreciate that. Okay.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you both, and thanks everyone for the questions. Unfortunately, we run out of time. So let's have our hands up and have a big thanks to all the two presenters. And I hope there's opportunity for you to visit my master.
Yes, I'm looking forward to visiting McMaster. As we talked about earlier, once the weather gets better. So
yeah.
So I'm looking forward to visiting you and your group and Bruce and everyone else. So
and just in case it wasn't mentioned earlier, is it okay that we share the recording publicly?
Yes. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. Thanks, everyone, and have a nice day and a nice weekend.
Well,
Bye.
thank you for the invitation.
thank
thank
you.
you for having us. Have a good
Thank you
weekend.
for the invitation.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.